name's Brian. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date's July 2nd, 1995. My home group sort of is the Archdale group up near High Point, but I haven't been there in over a year because they were shut down because of this corona nonsense. And now I'm struggling. Do I go to AA? I got used to going to doing my AA here again. I love both places, and what I'm struggling with is, am I coming here just out of convenience, or do I really want to be here? And am I not going to Archdale because I'm being lazy? So I gotta sort that in my head, and so I'll either be going back there, or I guess joining this group again, and either one's just as good. All right, I'm gonna try to. One of the things I always hate when I hear a speaker is it's like, half an hour into it and they're still not out of high school. And there were a lot of events. In my mind, I always kind of wonder, because I like to be difficult, am I an asshole because I'm an alcoholic, or am I an alcoholic because I'm an asshole? And really it doesn't matter. I'm an alcoholic. The only thing that matters is I'm an alcoholic, and I know I can't drink in safety anymore. To drink is to eventually die, and before that to live a life that ain't worth living. And I have one that is worth living now. I can look you in the eye and tell you that. That's a miracle. If it was just not drinking and not feeling the way I did when I was drinking at the beginning, that would have been enough. And Tuesday there was the topic was goals, and I remember my first goal as a teenager. I wanted to drink a 12-pack without puking. I'm serious. I remember there used to be beer distributors in New York, and they used to deliver beer. So I called up and had a case delivered, and me and my friend tried to drink it. And I was real mad. I only made it to about 10 before I was meeting the porcelain god. So that was my goal. I was going to drink a damn 12-pack without throwing up. And I eventually reached it, and I thought I was something else, I'll tell you. And then fast forward quite a few years, and I remember my first goal when I was newly sober, and that was to have 1 minute where I didn't want to take a drink. Never mind a month, a day, an hour, a minute without thinking about a drink. And it was that vicious cycle. The more I thought about a drink, the more I hated myself, and the more I hated myself, the more I thought about a drink. And it came to a head at I can't remember, between 15 and 17 months, and I was driving home with a 12-pack in my car, and I guarantee I would have drank them without puking. As soon as I got home, I really didn't want to drink because I would have cracked one on the way home. I had no qualms about drinking and driving around with an open container. And the phone rang, and it was my sponsor. I called the asshole and hung up. And I thought about it. I said, I don't know if this is God or it's coincidence, but if it's God and I take a drink, I'll be slapping him in the face. So I called him back and told him what was going on. And he said, son, I want you to get rid of them beers any way you can. And he goes, then I want you to get on your knees and pray for the obsession to be lifted. And I tell you what, I smashed them. I just threw them down, smashed them. For a second there, I almost got down on the ground and ate the dirt. There's that regret. And I got on my knees and I asked God, please, I can't do it this way no more. Give me a little help. Give me a little nudge in the right direction here. And you know what? I ain't gonna lie to you and say I've never thought of a drink. I certainly have dreamt about it, but I haven't had that obsession and it's because I started doing things the AA way and not Brian's way. Brian's way always got me drunk. I remember my sponsor used to say the old actions will get you the old results. And the old result was always I was wind up drunk and wonder how that happened. And if I look, hindsight being 2020, one of the signs because I was only using AA as damage control. Anyway, and one of the signs was I'd start squirreling away money. Usually when I had about $5,000 saved up, I'd go on a tear. Anyway, I'm going to get back to where I came from. I was born in New York. Couldn't guess that. I was adopted. That was my first big thing that I couldn't accept. And the attitudes were right there. I just not want to accept the idea that some people had the nerve to give up a prize package like me. What the? Are you kidding me now? And then the people who adopted me are just, middle class, nice working people. Why couldn't they have been billionaires? I truly thought this way. but really, what finding that out made me feel different than everybody else, and I didn't like that. I was only 7 years old. My mother will tell you he was nice. He was a good kid till he was 7 years old. Then he just went rotten. And a lot of kids find that out and have no problems with it. But I had that thing that I didn't like accepting anything I didn't like, and that's carried through my whole life. And I'm sure I'm not the only alcoholic that has a little problem with acceptance. I found out, thinking as unique as I am, my time in here has showed me one thing, is that I ain't a hell of a lot different than anybody else that come into these rooms. Did well in school, but I got good grades, but there was always this thing on my report cards: he's sullen and belligerent, he doesn't get along with other kids, this, that, and the other thing. He only applies himself to subjects he likes, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, about 14 years old, I discovered some other substance that you smoke, and right after that, I discovered alcohol. And all of a sudden, it seemed like all my problems were solved. It's funny, I played music, I played sports. I didn't become popular till I was the guy with the weed. So I was 14 years old, I was almost 6 feet tall, I weighed about 135 pounds, I had a face like a pizza. Why not drink? But all of a sudden, I started doing this stuff, and I found out it's real easy to be the negative one rather than the positive one. It's so easy to be a screw up. It takes no effort almost. All you got to do is screw up. It's easy. It was a natural at it. But anyway, progression was quick because of the dual addiction, and wound up drinking myself and drugging myself right out into the street by the time I was 17. Didn't take long. I was horribly addicted to narcotics and alcohol. And parents threw me out in the freezing ass cold. I don't know why they, I got to thank my mother, because my father didn't have a hard enough heart to do that, but my mom did. And I got to thank her for saving my life, because there's no way I would have lived much longer than the way I was going. I know that for a fact. Me and my mom don't get along. I'm a rebel. She's a conformist. It was a bad combination. She couldn't have adopted a worse son. And I love to point out all her faults as a mother, but I could tell you with a straight face that she did a hell of a better job raising me than I did raising my son. So, anyway, went to this rehab. Rehab was good back then. Actually, I'll backtrack a little. You had to go into the psych ward at first, and it was voluntary. So they talked to me for about 5 minutes, and then they switched it involuntary. He's a danger to himself and society. I just went on for like 20 minutes of who I was going to kill when I got the hell out of there. And I wasn't speaking figuratively. Anyway, they kept you forever in rehab back then. My father had this gigantic insurance policy, and it was co-ed, and you weren't supposed to mess around with the women, but they didn't enforce that, so it was good. If they wouldn't have made me leave, I'd still be there, I can tell you that. All you had to do was make your bed, go to group therapy in the morning, go to an AA meeting, which was right in the building at night. You got 3 squares a day, pretty much anything I needed. Why would you want to leave? But anyway, went out into the real world. I don't think I lasted 2 weeks. Some girl cut my hair. She was cute. I asked her out. She lit up a joint in the car, said, "You wanted some?" I said, "Yep." And it was just boom, right? It was just right where I left off. I didn't have to go back to rehab. I was back in AA pretty quick. And during this year, my year between 19 and 20, was the best year of my life. I met my first wife, we dated, we married, and this is the hard part of my story to tell. And it ended in tragedy, let's just put it that way. They're no longer with. She had a stepdaughter that I adored, and they were taken from me in the most brutal fashion you could imagine. I don't want to sound like boo-hoo, but I don't know if I have this coping skills to cope with something like that right now. I didn't, and I had none back then. My only coping skill for anything negative, or anything that caused me pain, was alcohol and drugs, and acting out. Ain't nothing like either getting your ass whipped or whipping somebody's ass when you're feeling bad, I can tell you that. But anyway, I sank. How to put this? I just became a horrible excuse. I used that as an excuse that I could act however I wanted and do whatever the hell I wanted. Because if you had my life, you would kill yourself. If you had to go through that, you would kill yourself. Not thinking that every human being that ever walked the face of this earth, if they live long enough, lost somebody. And that's one thing I've learned here, that my pain is no better or no worse than anybody else. But anyway, I became a horrible excuse for a human being. If you trusted me, I'd abuse that trust at every. If you loved me, I would test that friggin' love and run it right into the ground. My father was still alive at the time, and I took up this hobby kind of meeting women, and if they let me sleep over, I would just move in. He used to say, you're like a herd of you're like a swarm of locusts. You just go from woman to woman, picking them clean. And I'm not very proud of this, but that's how I thought I was entitled. Bad shit happened to me. And 2 years after that, my father came down with cancer and passed away himself. The one guy that would dare to come close to me to try to console me. Because everybody else, I would be mad if I didn't get your sympathy, but if you gave me it, I'd just tear your friggin' head off too. And I've always been contrary like that. I dread being the center of attention, but I'm resentful as hell if I ain't. This is great. I get to talk about my favorite person in the world for friggin' an hour. All joking aside. Anyway, started drinking again. Never saw the inside of another AA meeting for a good 10 years. Took up this career as a commercial fisherman. I dabbled in it before, and it was great for a guy like me. I was a binge drinker. I like to just drink till I couldn't drink no more. And I kind of had this thing in my head that, well, in rehab, I've noticed things. I said, well, look at these alcoholics here. They drink till they're 50 or 60, If I just stay away from the dry goods, I might be able to friggin' pull off drinking for another 20 or 30 years. So that was my grand plan at 19 years old, is I was going to drink myself back into AA in 20 or 30 years. That ain't alcohol thinking, I don't know what is. But anyway, this commercial fishing thing, I was constantly in trouble. Made a lot of money. We'd be out to sea 10, 12 days with guys just like me. So it didn't seem crazy anymore. These guys are just like me. They were the few sober people that were out there were ostracized. We would just rag on them constantly. What's the matter with you? You don't want to get messed up when you get in? See, I didn't say effed up. Trying. Anyway, and that's what I do. And the best thing about it is, if you stayed within that counterculture, these guys never went to the cops. There were guys who murdered each other that got away with it because no one said nothing. Cops would come, nobody knew nothing. Well, the knife just kind of flew out of the friggin' sky and landed in his heart. Anyway, I'd married again. I'd married my drinking buddy. I don't recommend it. And there was, looking back on it, there must have been some thought that, well, she's so fucked up, she'll never really care what the hell I'm doing. There's the first F-bomb. Let's keep track. Anyway, it wasn't a good marriage, and it would have been all right if we just, we'd done our thing and gone our own separate ways, but I didn't want to get married, to be honest with you. I told her she wanted to get married for whatever the hell reason, and I was like, well, you plan the whole thing out. You tell me when it's going to be, where it's going to be, and I'll be there. And I thought she was too lazy to do it, but damn it, she did. That's how I lived my life. It was just by the seat of my pants constantly. And fortunately, I love my boy, but he had to endure. He endured the last 5 years, my worst 5 years of drinking. And he saw things and heard things that no 5-year-old child should ever have to hear. When I'd get really, really messed up, I'd sleep in the bathtub. And no 3-year-old kid should have to ask, Daddy, why are you sleeping in the tub? I mean, I had, to this day, I don't know why, but when I was really messed up, I'd sleep in the bathtub. And my behavior at this time was, if I drank, I'd say maybe 60, I don't know how many percent of the time, but sometimes I'd be fine. But just one, and anything could set me off. And sometimes I wouldn't even know it set me off. Remember one time I had it figured out. I was going to say, the second I have a first bad thought, I'm going to stop drinking. So I started getting them all crazy thoughts. I said, all right, time to put the bottle of rum and the friggin' 12-pack down. I decided I was hungry. I was going to fry myself up some eggs. I couldn't find the spatula. Next thing I knew, I redecorated the kitchen with the eggs in the frying pan. And I mean, I was off to the races, 3-day blackout. I mean, just terrible. And I never believed in blackouts until my last 5 years of drinking, or 7 years of drinking. I can't remember when I started having them really bad. I figured that was like kind of a convenient way to, well, I don't know, I was in a blackout. I didn't know what happened. I don't remember, but they're real. I mean, just wake up somewhere and you don't know how you got there. There was a lot of entertaining kind of stuff, like when I got so drunk we took the wrong boat out. And these ain't like rowboats, these are like 200-ton boats. And I was a relief captain and of these 3 boats, the Tory T, the Pursuit, and the Prowler, and they all painted the same color. And we brought the one, I can't remember which one I was supposed to be on anymore, but I brought that one in, and we used to go to this gentleman's club in Danvers, Massachusetts, called the Golden Banana. If you were captain of a fishing boat, you had to let your guys go drink, but you had to try to keep them together, or it might take you a week to find them all. So the gentleman's club was a good way to keep them all in the same spot, especially if I was buying. Anyway, we went there, took the cab back to the boat, and they brought one of the other boats in and tied it up on the outside of it, and that was the first boat I saw, so out we went. Finally found somebody that was almost sober enough to drive the damn thing, and go down to my bunk, and there's a picture of somebody's wife down there. And I knew just the picture. I couldn't stand my wife. I never had a picture of my wife in my bunk. Maybe the playmate of the month, but never my wife. So I said, something's seriously wrong here. Sure enough, on the wrong damn boat. Brought it in. Naturally, the police and the Coast Guard and the boat owner were waiting for us, reported the boat stolen. I said, I didn't steal it, I just made a mistake. And I couldn't understand why they fired us all. I really couldn't. He's like, how could you take out the wrong boat? I was like, man, we was all drunk as hell. He goes, that's my point. I said, we're fishermen, this is what we friggin' do. I said, you ain't gonna friggin' find any fishermen. You ain't gonna, I was always tell you ain't gonna find anybody catch as much fish as me. He goes, I don't give a shit. He goes, how much fish you catch? He goes, I know, if I let you take this boat again, it'd be on the bottom of the ocean or worse. All kinds of crazy shit like that. I mean, fishing in Canadian waters and getting thrown in Canadian jail. I mean, all kinds of friggin' antics at the dock when we was, in between trips. But anyway, I went on a bad drunk down in Gloucester, because I used to like to take my fish out in Gloucester. 1, you could sell lobsters for cash there. 2, you could, there was nobody really knew me there, so that's good. Anyway, I borrowed a bunch of money from some loan shark down there to continue my tear, and somehow got back to my ex-wife, and she friggin' had the bags packed. And I really needed somebody to take care of my dogs when I was gone, so I couldn't really let her leave. So I said, I'll try AA again. So I went to a meeting, and something clicked. I mean, I stayed sober. I stayed dry for 3 months. I got a sponsor, and he was a really good guy. He sponsored me, all through the years. His name was Charlie. And he's a guy just like me, a wild man, drunk, tad drinker, just like myself. And I bounced in and out of AA. Like I said, I was using it as damage control. And my last drunk was like a 2-month bender. Well, nothing really different happened, but it was just one thing after another. The night of my last drink, and then we'll get into some sobriety here, I went to this friggin' club that I used to go to, and about 6 months before, I was at the same place, and I was face down in a puddle of water, and I had a fat cop with his friggin' boot on my neck and another one standing on my back, saying they wouldn't let me up till I stopped threatening to kill them. And I somehow figured, your average person just ain't doing this on a Friday night. You know, and that was pretty typical. If I drank long enough and I was on land long enough, I was in handcuffs. But anyway, at this place, I had a bad blackout, and came home, and the wife and kid were gone. I really didn't much care about that. Woke up the next morning, and somebody trashed my damn house. I almost called the cops saying some drunken some maniac friggin' trashed my house once, but it was me, of course. I don't remember it. But I had enough right there. Oh, and then the phone rings, and it's my ex-wife. She goes, "Your son wants to talk to you." And he's just begging me to stop drinking so he can come home. And 9 out of 10 times, God forgive me, I'd have hung up the damn phone, but I didn't. Somehow it got through. It talks about in the big book, those moments of clarity. And I called my sponsor. I told him I had enough. And came over and went to a meeting in Madison, Maine. And I was never picked up my white chip. I never really ever said anything when I picked up a white chip, but I looked everybody in the eye. I said, I never thought I'd say this, but alcohol's got me beat. I can't do it no more. And that was my surrender to alcohol. Months down the road of trying to live alcoholically without the drink, I had to surrender to the program Alcoholics Anonymous, and that was a whole nother banana. But anyway, over these years, I mean, I've learned a few things. I mean, I've learned that hope is a good thing, but it also could be a bad thing if you use it the wrong way. Like not paying your taxes and hoping the IRS won't come banging down your door. Little things like that, you know. It's right, all right to hope, you know, you stay sober, but to live the wrong life and hope everything's going to go good, it's flawed thinking. I've learned to trust my higher power. I remember the first time, my sponsor used to go to me early in sobriety. He'd say, "You want to get on your knees and do a third step prayer with me?" I said, "Hell no, man, I ain't turning my life to no God." I go, what kind of fun's that going to be? Because I knew God's will and my will, two totally different things. And eventually, the pain of not turning it over became greater than the fear of turning it over. And nothing bad happened. Actually, a lot of good things happened. I mean, and at first it was and to this day, the closer the stuff is and the more valuable it is to you, the closer it is to your heart, not crazy stuff like, you know, playing the lottery, but the stuff that's really close to your heart is hard to trust God with and turn it over. I mean, this is human nature. You know, I ask God for certain things, and you know, mostly for other people, and I always preface it with, if it any way could be, if you will, a desire in my heart is, you know, if this could happen. Anyway. Sobriety's been pretty good. My sobriety really hasn't been, I mean, I went through a divorce, but if you don't really like your wife, it was kind of a hard transition though. I mean, coming home to nobody. Sometimes it's better to come home to somebody that's, you know, yelling and screaming and ragging on you than just an empty house. So it was kind of lonely at first. I thought it was going to be this, you know, like back in the 70s, you know, I can't say it politically correct, so I just won't say it. But you know what I'm driving at. The worst thing that's happened, the thing that made me feel the worst in 26 years was my dog died about 4 years ago. And maybe that ain't a big deal, but you know, in my house where I live, and to me, dogs are family. And she was more than just a dog. I mean, she was my constant companion. She was the protector of that house. She took her job very seriously. She was a tough old girl, and I still miss her. You know, I got another dog, and I thought that would take all the pain away, but if I think about it, it's still got a little bit of sting to it. You know, but that's, I mean, the thing that made me feel the worst. I mean, certain things that happened to me in sobriety, some people might think was worse than that. I mean, I had a million things that I brought down on my own head. Let's see, 10 years sober, somebody shot at me. 12 years sober, my truck got repossessed. And right after that, I wound up in jail. at like 13 years sober. I mean, so obviously I wasn't living right up till then. I mean, that's not, I don't think anywhere in the big book that you're supposed to get thrown in jail at 13 years sober. And it's because I was living with somebody, I was caught up in this drama kind of relationship, and the drama went too far one night. Cops down here just love to throw a Yankee in jail. They pretty much said that as much too. He's like, well, he goes, you're gonna, and I was going to call the cops, I'll never do that again. It's like, well, he goes, you're going to call us and make us come out here. He goes, we're just going to throw you both in jail and let you cool down for 48 hours. Like, whoa. Sure enough. At that point, I started dealing with some old issues that I never dealt with, and life got better. You know, I realized at 13 years sober, I was freaking angry all the time. I mean, angry. Not sometimes I'd be just, you know, like they talk about the guy in the big book whistling by the graveyard. That was me. You know, I'd be, oh, how's everything going? Fine. And I'd be like, drop the fuck dead under my breath. If I seen anybody that I thought looked happy, I hated them immediately. And it was because I didn't deal with those issues of those losses that I suffered. And I started dealing with them, and I ain't gonna say I'm like, you know, throwing tulips and roses all over the place and happy, joyous, and free, but I'm a lot less angry than I was. And that's, you know, another thing I learned in sobriety, it's all right to ask the question why and certain things, but that question also kill you. I mean, when I lost my first wife and my stepdaughter and my father, I mean, that's all I want to know, why. This ain't fair. This ain't fair. This shouldn't have happened to me, you know. And people say stupid shit when you lose, and I try not to say these things. Oh, it's part of God's plan, and you know, they're in a better place now. It's like, well, let God get their own wife and kid and their own father, and let me keep mine, you know. Sometimes it's just best, I mean, for me, a hug and I'm, you know, sorry for your loss is all you need to say for me. Maybe other people need those other words. I remember my father's wake, there was a guy that worked with him, he said, well, he's with Jesus now. And I was like, oh, that might be true, but I'd rather have him here. And I went up side of him and down the other, and he's like, well, I lost my 3-year-old daughter a couple of years ago. And I was hoping maybe he'd say hi. You know, and sometimes, even as mean and as drunk, you know, just that mean spirit I had, sometimes things like that would cut right through me. I remember another time I used to wear this stupid ass shirt that said, damn, drunks against mad mothers. And I was at a family reunion at this party. It ain't funny. I thought it was funny at the time, and somebody tapped me on the shoulder, and this woman gave me a roundhouse slap. I had too many guys hit me that hard. I mean, my eyes were watering. Tears were just popping out of her eyes of rage. And she said, my daughter was killed by a drunk driver, you son of a bitch. She goes, take that effing shirt off right now. What do you say to that? Took the shirt off. I'll tell you the worst I ever felt when I was drinking. I was trying to squeeze myself through the doors of reasonable doubt, and I put my hand on the Bible, which I consider a sacred book, and they asked me if I was going to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and I knew I was going to, maybe not out and out lie, but I was going to do a lot of bending and deflecting. And I tell you what, I never felt so dirty, filthy, and ugly in my whole entire life than that. Sometimes it ain't if it was just a matter of drunken barroom brawls and cracking up cars and just acting like an asshole, I'd probably still be out there. It was things like that that made me feel less than human. And that's pretty much drinking. That's what drinking did for me. It made me feel less than human. It made me feel ugly. And that's what my disease wanted. My disease would love to have me start, backsliding and start acting like a jerk again. And I do sometimes. So I get to the point where the best idea I got that day is to take a drink. And I can't let that happen. My father used to tell me I dabbled in some amateur boxing. Actually, I was pretty heavy into it. And he told me, you got to train so hard that a guy just a little bit better than you can't beat you. And it's kind of like that here. You got to make sure that on your worst day, alcohol ain't an option. And it's all right just not to. The best 3 words, I don't know. liberating, not having to be right all the time. My sponsor used to always say, you want to be right or you want to be happy? When me and my ex-wife were fighting it out in the 15th round of our marriage, and still the winner was still up for grabs. He would say, I'd come in and say, friggin' goddamn it, I'm out friggin' the seat, friggin' 2-3 weeks at a time. I come home, the dishes is piled up to the ceiling. He goes, well, son, if it bothers you that much, do them. It's like, what? He goes, what do you want to be, right or happy? I said, I want to be right. Who the hell's happy? Ain't nobody happy. You happy? I don't know a damn person who's happy. And I just wasn't looking hard enough. There's a song by Jethro Tull called "My God," and there's a line in it that struck me right between the eyes. It says, "He is the God of nothing, if that's all that you could see." And that's why he was the God of nothing to me, because I couldn't see it. I wasn't looking. I realize now, one of the biggest things that ever happened to me in early sobriety, I was painting the Presbyterian church right here in Pinehurst, and they had these nice. I always considered myself somewhat of a Christian. I mean, I'm not my behavior wouldn't tell you so much, but I do believe in. That's the religion and the spirituality I was raised with, and I bought it hook, line, and sinker when I was a kid, and I still buy it, and that's my thing. But anyway, there was these nice charcoal pictures of Jesus in these different life situations, comfort in a soldier, and things like that. And there was a plaque with the footprints story. Well, I don't know if it's a prayer, whatever you call it. And I used to have a coffee cup that had it on. I never read it once because I didn't appeal to my Neanderthal way of thinking. It's kind of wimpy there, that footprints. But anyway, I read it, and we got to the part where there's no two sets of footprints because God was carrying me, and it hit me right between the eyes that the only reason I am drawing breath is it's God's grace. Things like that. Certain things, I'm not the most emotional person in the world. Well, if I'm in private, I am. I'm Italian. A really pretty song could move me to tears if ain't nobody around. That's the real Brian, not the friggin' jerk persona that I project. But anyway, certain times and I hate it because there's always seems to be people around, and it catches me by surprise. And the first time it was at a big book meeting in Skowhegan, Maine. I read the part with the 4 horsemen, and you can't imagine life with or without alcohol, and you'll know loneliness and I mean tears just oh. And my sponsor clapped me on the shoulder, and that's the kind of guy he was. And after the meeting, he grabbed me by both shoulders, looked me in the eye, and he said, the good news, son, is you never have to feel that way again. There was another, and sometimes it's just stupid as shit. I was watching this movie a long time ago, Bram Stoker's Dracula, and there was this vampire just come out of the coffin, and Anthony Hopkins goes, she walks outside the grace of God. And I mean, just same thing. As I know what it was like to walk outside the grace of God. And it wasn't because God forsook me, it's because I didn't want to be in the grace of God. And it's always been if I'm hurt, my first reaction is to isolate, be angry. Angry's a lot easier to deal with than pain. It always has. That's always been my default. And I could recognize that. I could honestly say when my dog died, I didn't take it out on anybody. And that was, for me, is a miracle. I remember when my father passed away, and I had the kind of cancer he had was like somebody took a magic eraser to him. It was the most horrible thing I ever seen over a period of time. And I had to go to the funeral home and make sure he looked presentable, and he looked anything but. I mean, I was just, back then I didn't cry much, but I was bawling tears. And there was this poor guy sitting at the bus stop smiling. I thought he was laughing at me crying. I ran over there and cracked him one. I mean, that's, my uncle's like, what the hell are you doing? I go, he's laughing at me. The guy said, I was just thinking about a joke. I said, no, you were laughing at me, you son of a bitch. That was me, drinking. I mean, and for me not to, be in pain and not to take it out on nobody is a milestone. To see a program, I mean, everything about it. I mean, going through these steps, I feared these steps. I mean, I covered it up with the stain. I'm going to shut up in about 2 minutes. But I mean, especially like 4 and 5. I grew up my parents were good people, but they were Italian, so the cops came, you didn't know nothing, you didn't hear nothing, you didn't say nothing. And just the way you didn't, the only place you confessed was in church. And I was really struggling with the fifth step. My sponsor had to quit being my sponsor for a time. He lost his job and his wife in a matter of like 2 months. And on the good side of it, he showed me that a man could go through stuff like that with grace, and not, and on the bad side, I kind of got a little put off by it. He's like, man, you're 10 years sober, and stuff like that. What's my incentive to stay sober? He goes, well, it has nothing to do with it. He goes, it rains on the just as well as it rains on the unjust. It's things like that, simple things like that, that really sunk into me and that I remember. Life ain't fair. It ain't fair and it ain't unfair. It's just what it is. It is. I mean, and that's always been my biggest character defect that I uncovered in my fourth step. I don't know how to play the cards I got. For a while, a goal in sobriety was to have a normal first thought. That ain't never gonna happen. Ain't never gonna happen. My first thought in any kind of conflict is gonna be antisocial, over the top, killing an ant with a flamethrower. So my first thought, I gotta catch it and say, well, it's like a bad hand of cards. You gotta get rid of that hand. And my sponsor, he was big on the sayings. At Maine, they were big on the slogans, sayings, and he would say things like, you're not responsible for your first thought, but you are for your second. And he goes, you're certainly responsible for the crap that comes out of your mouth and your actions. So yeah, my first thought ain't no good. It doesn't have to come out of my mouth. It doesn't have to be acted out. And I ain't gonna say I'm a smart ass. I mean, my first thought and somebody says something is usually a sarcastic one. I love sarcasm. That's great. But it's also a good recipe for being alone all your life. People get pretty sick of it pretty fast. 4 and 5 were the two I really struggle with. And then just to be obstinate, I read that you're supposed to do the fifth step right after the fourth, so I took a year off. And that was the worst goddamn sobriety. I'm telling you what, man, don't do it. If you're thinking about it, don't do it. And eventually, my second sponsor, he didn't want to hear, he knew some of my history and some of the squeaking myself through the doors are reasonable. I better keep my mouth shut, there's a recorder going here, but anyway, make a long story short, he didn't want to hear anything that had legal ramifications. How's that? And so I said, well, who am I saying it to? He goes, I don't know, who do you trust? I said, really? Nobody with shit like that. He's like, well, you're Catholic. He goes, why don't you try doing it at the Catholic church in the confessional? And you know what? It worked for me. That's how I had to do it. That's the only place I felt comfortable. That's the only place where I felt like somebody wasn't going to blab it. I told the priest first, what I was doing. I was going to just walk in there. It's been 36 years since my last confession. After about 20 minutes, he was like, that I went through all this stuff, and it was all my wrongdoings that I could remember. And he's like, I don't know what to give for a penance of that. He goes, I guess, he goes, if you continue to stay sober and, trying to live a better life, he goes, that's good enough. He said, keep up the good fight or something like that. And that gave me a little hope. And after that, the rest of the steps felt I faulted a little with 8 and 9. I still had this idea that anybody I wronged pretty much had it coming. But I got over that. And I did a pretty thorough 8th and 9th step. And there's still some people on the list that I am ready to make amends. But the biggest amends was damn paying the IRS. The most painful one was paying the damn IRS the money I owed them. That was a hard amends. I had to live friggin' hand to mouth for about 4 or 5 years doing that. But you know what? It was just like getting rid of the drinking. The monkey was off my back. I don't have to cringe every time the phone rings or I get a letter in the mail. But old tapes die hard. And when I got my first stimulus check, I saw the Department of Treasury. It's like, damn it, they uncovered another year that I didn't pay. I was like, ooh, it's money. But anyway, if you knew, I hope this talk won't keep you from coming back. I gotta say, the woman I live with now, she heard my story and actually agreed to go out with me, so she's gotta be next to a saint. You know, and if you're wondering if you're an alcoholic, I got bad news. You're at an AA meeting. It's not a good start. But I could tell you, I could promise you, if you do this thing, somebody in here likes to say, and I believe it, that it ain't, you know, a lot of people want it, a lot of people need it, but it only works for those who do it. And the more I do it, the better things go. So if you do this thing, I can guarantee you, I ain't gonna say a better life, you'll be able to deal with life a lot better, and life will take on a whole new meaning. It has for me. And I mean, this is the most worthwhile thing I've ever done in my life. And my goal is now, is maybe to retire before I'm 106 and die sober. I think that's a good goal. Thank you.